Good morning and welcome to Pro Landscaper TV. Delighted that you've joined us today, whether you're watching us on Facebook Live, Instagram Live or through Zoom. And of course, all those watching through the catch-up channels. Hopefully by now, you know we're here live every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Yes, I said 10 a.m. and not previously stated at 10 p.m. Thank you very much, Tim, for pointing that out to us. Thanks again, well done to Nina and the panel from last week's climate change debate. Good strides being made, especially by the companies involved, but maybe more needs to be made and maybe at a greater pace than currently happening. So that's something we can all keep our eye on. This and all the previous programmes can be accessed on the YouTube channel, on the Pro Landscaper YouTube channel, and of course on the Pro Landscaper website. Next week, we've got a debate on marketing. Jess McCabe from LJ's has pulled together a panel of experts to talk about how to market to the landscaping sector and sharing their knowledge and tips on how to maximise your time and effort in your marketing. Also, I'm sure you'll be very pleased to hear that Futurescape exhibition, the live exhibition, will take place on the 16th and 17th of November at Excel London, where we're going to have loads of topical debates and in-depth conversations, as well as around 150 exhibitors. We look forward to seeing you all in person for a change then. But today I'm delighted to be joined by Howard Gray. Howard is Urban Specification Consultant at Sussex-based GreenBlue Urban. Howard, a very, very just quick introduction to him, and I learned more through a catch-up we had last week, is an unbelievably an urban tree enthusiast. Howard has closely been involved in trees for most of his life. He's passionate that us all take responsibility to make sure that our future generation has all the quality urban canopies that maybe we all enjoyed as we were growing up. He also thinks that the sectors as a whole need to act together to make sure this is delivered and done in the best possible way. Thank you very much for joining us, Howard. Welcome.
Thanks, Jim. Really glad to be with you this morning.
Good.
Thank you for that encouraging tribute.
Yeah, I actually, when I came away from that quick catch-up we had, I was infused about today. I think it's some fantastic areas that we can cover. I guess the best way, if we just start off with a little bit of history of 30 years ago as the company was formed, and also I think give a bit of context about how it's formed as a landscaping business to give you a bit of an insight into what was needed.
Thanks, Jim. Yes, well, it goes really back to the late 80s, mid to late 80s, when our current CEO, Dean Bowie, started his own landscaping business, having had horticultural training, and took on some really nice projects, planting trees, doing quite a lot with local authorities and highways authorities, and became aware that trees actually didn't have a great chance of actually achieving their potential, particularly in urban areas. And this really came from one of the really hot summers, and he'd actually done quite a nice tree planting job and found that the trees, he couldn't get the water to the trees fast enough. And in fact, there was a drought order on, so he wasn't allowed to use a tap. And he actually finally had to get some water in from a neighbouring water authority in a tanker. And he was horrified to see nearly all the water he was putting around the trees actually ran off the tree planting beds and just ran down the drain. And this was water that he'd spent good money on. And he started looking into, how we can improve the chances of tree establishment. And that's where the initial idea of getting water below the ground to those growing roots and the root rain metro was launched. So then in fact, that's the first perforated pipe system that accurately measures the water that goes in, and you can then make sure it's all going to the roots. And really it's all gone from there. And that was started in 92. That was green leaf horticulture, supplying products to landscapers that would actually help them in tree establishment. So we originally started irrigation, moved on to root management, and then to the development of the soil cell. The business has just grown and grown and grown, because it's all very science-based. We do all our innovations on what's going to be best for the tree. A lot of research goes into this, and it's not just what will sell, it's what's actually going to enhance the life of the tree.
Yeah, we're just going back then. What systems were being used previously then? Was it just a judgment of how much water or regular watering? What was?
Yeah, I mean, there were some people that Yeah, there were some people that stuck a little pipe in the ground or something, but most of it was just superficially watered either with a hose or from a bowser. And you would just work out roughly how many seconds or how many minutes or whatever you had to water it for. But the problem was you weren't getting that water below the surface. Most of it ran off or evaporated or just stayed in that top couple of inches, which not only meant the water didn't properly get to those emerging roots that are growing out from the root balls, but it also meant that the tree tended to root very superficially. The tree roots came up to the surface to try and get any available water there was, which meant that they became more drought intolerant in future years because the roots were just so shallow. Also meant the trees are more likely to fall over. So yeah, it's very much moved from just landscaping more into a science of tree establishment over the last 30 years.
And as the company's developed, in terms of, we'll talk a bit more about the different products and the way the products are manufactured, but where was the initial pitch at the landscape architects? Was it the landscapers? Where were you focusing on in terms of the education and trying to explain why this was beneficial?
Yeah, that's quite an interesting question, because we didn't know that the whole idea of big landscape suppliers and things, it wasn't anywhere near as common as it is now. So we kind of started off trying to supply local authorities who we felt were doing the majority of planting because they had an interest in those trees. And then we tried supplying through perhaps merchants, builders merchants, or some sort of horticultural merchants. And then they said to us often, well, you need to get this specified because we only supply what's specified. So we then had to change tack and then go to the landscape architects and get these products specified. So it was quite a steep learning curve, because it's which came first, was it the chicken or the egg? You do get specified, you get it out there in the suppliers. But finally, we found a pretty even way of working, and it's really been very much a specification market since then. We supply very little that's actually not been specified onto a job. Not very many people want to go and buy a tree grill because they thought it looked nice.
And in terms of, though they do look nice, sometimes they're done properly. And in terms of, I guess from the entry point, it's going to add cost to the initial project, which I guess people had to swallow that and look at it. But how quick did people understand that initial outlay was going to save the money if things went wrong and potential like that? How hard did you have to work as a business to explain the value of it?
Yeah, it was a challenge, but we were looking at a product here that cost less than £10. But it would massively increase the chances of success. Bear in mind, when we started, we were looking at a mortality rate of up to 25% failures in the first year. Now, that's not just the cost of a tree, that's the cost of actually digging it, the old one out and replacing it. And more than that, it's actually the loss of potential canopy we could have had. Probably the thing that's helped us most over the last 30 years is this increasing realization and valuation of trees. Yeah. We are beginning to really understand how much they mean to us as a race and what they do for us. And I think that has helped the understanding that if we're going to get a quality of canopy cover, we have to front load the investment. And I think that this, I mean, it's still a challenge, particularly on sites where budgets are really, really restrictive. But what we say is it's better to have less really healthy trees than more failing trees.
And so my initial question or my initial thoughts is, so why wouldn't people have it? Is it purely down to the cost then? Why wouldn't you, if you know it's going to, it's going to have a long-term benefit, it's going to give the tree much more opportunity to survive? Why wouldn't you do it?
Well, there's a number of different reasons that come up. Principally, I guess it's because the guys that actually have to pay for the products, so that's the installers perhaps, they don't have any particular long-term interest in that site. And we often find that even developers may only have a short to medium term interest in the site. So they may be only interested in that development for 3 to 5 years, and then they want it to be adopted, or the public areas to be adopted by local authorities. So as long as the trees are still alive at the end of the planning condition period, then it's not their worry anymore.
Yeah.
And this is this short-termism that we find so challenging. But the other side of the coin is that people haven't been historically used to doing it. People have got a figure in their head of £100 to plant a tree in the street, or £150 to plant a tree in the street. And we say, yeah, that was 30 or 40 years ago. And most of those trees would not have done well. So we've been trying to educate the market, really, in fact, to help say that we need to actually invest more than that if we're going to get the results we need. It is a tricky one overcoming it. It's partly education and partly cost.
How do you overcome that short-termism? How do we, as an industry, I guess, or as a community, say that actually we shouldn't just be thinking about, as soon as I get it off my hands, I don't care about it anymore, and we should embed that, you know, it needs to be done because this is how we're going to have better air, etc., etc.
Yeah, this is something that we're working on every single day to try and educate and improve the chances. But we find it needs carrot and stick. So we've got some of these larger development companies who have taken their corporate social responsibilities really serious, and who have gone back and looked at some of their 15-year-old developments and said, look, this isn't what we want our current developments to look like in 15 years. So they are really taking on the green healthy agenda. But it also needs a courage from a local authority to insist on it. Yeah. And it's really both. There has to be the desire from the client, and there has to be the strength of the local authority, who at the end of the day are probably going to adopt these areas. So it's going to be their liability or their legacy, depending on how it's done.
Yeah, so important we get that right.
Very, very, very important. And to be fair, we have seen some brilliant examples of it. Yeah. There's some exemplar schemes where there has been a real working together, and the output has been really, really good.
We'll come back and talk about some of those schemes in a minute. Just a couple of other things then. So when did GreenBlue Urban as a company name spring to mind, and what was the thinking behind that?
Well, back in 2012, 2013, we were moving a lot of resource and research into looking at the idea of sustainable drainage, incorporating green infrastructure. Because of the challenges that we have in many of our urban areas, it's a no-brainer to actually make our drainage systems to incorporate green infrastructure. And so the green leaf horticulture had really, the company had moved away from just the horticulture. We're moving very much into the landscape, and then with the sustainable drainage moving into engineering. So we thought we need to change the name. There are other green leaves out there. We were coming across some funny phone calls with people who used to doing indoor plants or washroom services. So that was one of the reasons. Another reason was, as I say, we wanted to incorporate some of the sustainable drainage, the blue, so GreenBlue Urban. And finally, we became a limited company. And we were a partnership before, and Greenleaf Limited had unfortunately been taken by a company, I believe, that arranges Indians' weddings for English gentlemen, which is a fantastic demographic, but even more confusing on the phone calls. So, yes, we became GreenBlue Urban.
Okay, and just again, the question of a massive question that came up last week a lot about plastic, and so all your below ground products are plastic.
Yes, they would all be recycled polypropylene. That's right.
And when you say recall, so they've all had previous lives as something else as a plastic product.
Correct. Yeah, they've all finished their useful life or whatever they were doing. They're then reground, reprocessed to a very, very high standard, and then we reuse that material.
Okay, and the reason you use plastic?
That's a great question. We are currently, and we have been for a number of years, looking at numerous alternatives to plastics. But when we're looking at something structural, for example, a soil cell, we have to have structural integrity on that product for a very long time. And it's actually very hard to do that with recycled cardboard, for example. But when we're looking at alternatives, which we have investigated things like concretes or fired clays, what we find is they have a very large carbon footprint. They involve a lot of carbon in their production. So in a way, what we would save on not having plastic, we would then be actually causing problems to the environment other ways. So we're still working with a number of universities to actually look into some new products that are cost effective as well as long-term structurally good.
So with the plastic, it's all recycled, and then again, I guess there's a opportunity for it to be recycled afterwards. And where's all the manufacturing? Where are you producing?
Yeah, the vast majority of our products are actually produced on the site where we are at head office. And so we are minimising our carbon footprint on that. All our other plastics are produced in the south of England. We can't just do all of them in-house, but we are concentrating on making sure that the quality of that polypropylene is so high that it can be recycled up to 5 times. And we actually offer a free service. If people have got product that they don't need, or that they, for some reason, they've had to take out of the ground, if they return it to us, we will recycle those products.
Okay, and has that happened yet, or are we still too early in the phase of them?
Yeah, we have had a couple of trees that have had to come out, and some of those products have come back to us. On the whole, the idea is that these products will support the tree growth for over 100 years. So we don't anticipate a massive return of a lot of our products. And what we're finding is, even when, for example, a tree has been hit by a vehicle and has had to be replaced, all they do is actually just dig out the tree stump, grind it out big enough to put a new root ball in there. And then the new rooting takes place alongside the old rooting in the ground. So that it's not a matter of we have to dig up all the product if we have to replace a tree. That's not the case.
And in terms of, like, from a landscaper's point of view, how easy is it for them to be used? How easy is it to be installed? How much sort of time does it take or add on to their jobs?
That's a great question, and of course that's very site specific and job specific. But we offer a full free installation assistance service where an engineer will attend site and make sure that the installer is fully happy about how the system all goes together. But there's installation videos on our website. There's a lot of other support there. And we find that once contractors have done it once, they just say, this is so easy, we'll do it ourselves next time. There is a bit of a fear whenever anybody does something it's unknown. You know, you're a bit worried at how long it's going to take you. But pretty much every contractor we've dealt with has been pleasantly surprised how simple and easy it is.
And again, would I be able to do it? Is it, or is there some kind of technical knowledge needed?
No, it's as simple. Many of our customers have called it landscapers Lego. It's very, very simple. Once you understand what the system's trying to do, then it's very simple to understand how to do it.
Okay, and is there any sort of guarantee then in terms of what, if it's done properly, how it will support the tree? Have you, as a company, do you underwrite any guarantee on that?
Yeah, we're about to relaunch the Arbor Advanced Warranty, which actually guarantees trees they'll be thriving in 15 years from planting, which is the first time that's ever been done in the world. Because we know that if we get these simple elements right, then the tree's going to grow. Now, if the tree gets struck by lightning or hit by a bus, we can't guarantee that. But what we say is we know if we give it good soil, if we give it water, we give it air, make sure it's got aerated soil, not uncompacted soil, make sure it's kept upright, it's protected from vandalism, and it's maintained, it's watered, then that tree will grow. The chances are. And we find that when we have that, we have a very similar mortality record to a tree grown in a nursery. We might lose 1 in 100, but we've actually never lost a tree in one of our systems due to a failure of the soil or of any of our products.
And just talk about soil. How important is the soil in that?
Jim, it's the most important thing you can do is soil. Soil is so critical. And I think we're beginning to realize this in this country. There's some really good work going on with soil scientists to help us understand that soil is a vital part of our life. It supports everything that we do. But make sure that we've got adequate volume of a good quality topsoil is really the only way we are going to get trees to grow long term.
Yeah.
Sorry,
I was going to say, and so in terms of the warranty, then how does the choice of soil then? Are you choosing the soil? Are you recommending the soil? Or
if we're going to warranty the tree for 15 years, then we have to supply the soil, and we have to make sure that we get a certificate on that, because that is the single most critical element that will decide how long the tree is going to live.
Okay. And just like talking about, we said we'd look at some of the projects you've done. Then, if the people watching here and you wanted to say that a massive, fantastic example of your action at work, or the landscaper's action at work, in terms of tree canopies and the quality and the life of trees, where would you recommend that they go? Which projects have you been involved in that you really think, wow, that's superb?
Well, I've got a problem there, Jim, because there's so many that I really struggle to
So
find.
I'll tell you what, let's do one in, if you can, then let's do one in the Four Nations.
Okay, well, I guess one of my favourite projects in London are the trees actually in Paternoster Square outside St Paul's Cathedral. They're only actually planted in about 2005, so they're only been just in over 15 years, and they are huge. They didn't go in that big, but we gave them really good soil. And what they've done is they've grown into that soil volume, and they've enabled those trees to become pretty much iconic. They're the backdrop of so many photographs. And in the summer, we get all the restaurants taking the chairs out on there, and it really softens that whole area, which otherwise the City of London can be pretty harsh. So that's one of my favourite ones in London. If we go down to Wales, well, I guess. And many would know that one of my favourite projects down there is in Cardiff, in Greener Grange Town, which is a sustainable drainage scheme where over 130 trees were planted in 12 streets, taking all the water off the roads, actually putting them through the tree pits and rain gardens, draining them out slowly, and finally dropping that water into the River Taff. So that's trees supporting a full sustainable drainage system. So that's a great project that we're really pleased to be involved in. In Scotland, I guess Sauchiehall Street in Glasgow would be one that primarily comes to mind. It's a great street that runs from the west end of Glasgow into the city centre, and with some money that they got from the Green Deal for the government, they planted over 30 trees, large trees, down in what was in effect the centre of the road, taking over one of the vehicle lanes and giving that over to cyclists and pedestrians. So you've got vehicles one side of this row of trees, and then you've got pedestrians and cyclists the other, and it's totally regenerated the street. It's just a completely different place to where it was before. So that was a great scheme, and that was a really truly cross-disciplinary project that there were so many different stakeholders involved in, but it's been a great success.
Northern Ireland, or is that?
We've done quite a lot in Northern Ireland, but that's a sister company that deals with that one. So I'm afraid I'm not too able to say too much about Northern Ireland. One project we did do in Southern Ireland, in Dublin, we actually did a sustainable drainage system there, right in the heart of the city. Actually planted a row of trees that takes all the water off the road there. And that's quite incredible that even though it's a really tight city location, these trees have transformed that road. So yeah, not Northern Ireland. I'm sorry, I'm not really up with all the projects there.
Okay. And the question I come to now, what is a perfect job for you? Where do you sort of feel, wow, this is actually really, really good for us? This really shows off our products in such a great light. What would a landscape architect or a landscaper come to you and say, we've got this in mind, would be really exciting?
That's a difficult one, Jim, because I'm enthused about every tree that we get planted. We're saving the world one tree at a time. But what we say is that any urban tree planting that's done properly has the ability to make so many changes to people's lives. And we might say that one tree in a harsh inner city location will bring more benefits to people than perhaps 10 trees or 100 trees in a hilltop situation, up in the mountains or something, because it's that impact at human scale. So what we say is I'm happy to talk about one tree projects because we just see them as having made some significant changes to the quality of people's lives.
Have you spoken to Prince Charles recently about his plans for the 60th anniversary of the Queen, or not?
No, I'm not actually on chatting terms with him most of the time. I think
I'll do an introduction for you.
Thank you very much. Oh, certainly be an interesting one. But I think the idea of it is a great idea. But what's more important, and this is what we see as a challenge within the industry, is whether there's the funding for the maintenance longer term. It's great planting trees, and yes, you could say the more trees we plant, the better. But that's not really the criteria we're looking at. What we want to see is, are these trees going to be bringing us the benefits in 20 years' time that we're going to be needing so urgently by then? And is there the funding mechanism in place to make sure they can be looked after, they can be maintained? And I'm a bit concerned about it because some local authorities have got these very, very big plans to increase their tree numbers within their boroughs. But I'm thinking, if you're planting an extra 1,000 trees in your boroughs, who's going to maintain them? Who's going to look after them? Because they will require a certain level of maintenance. What we do find, on the other hand, is the better the way we plant the tree, the less it costs to maintain over its lifespan.
Yeah. I think that's a really, really important thing, isn't it? And that, and in terms of, I guess, pitching it to local authorities and getting local authorities to buy in, if they realise that the maintenance cost over a period of time and things done properly is going to cost less, that's the way to win that argument.
And also to use software, tree valuation software, such as iTree that we've been involved in, and there's Cavat, which is another tree valuation tool, is to actually understand that how much this tree is going to be worth to us if it's healthy.
Yeah.
It's not how much it's costing us to maintain, but what's it bringing to us in terms of ecosystem services. Yeah. That's up until fairly recently has been quite hard to actually properly evaluate. But that's when we start seeing some serious returns on investment.
Yeah. It's like,
and what?
Sorry, I was going to say it's landscaping as a whole, isn't it? Because it is one thing that is really missing, or has been missing. I know there are lots of case studies now about the value of landscaping as a whole that brings to society, and I feel like at the moment we're in a really, really strong position to make sure that we maximise that opportunity and drive that through. And that's pretty much what you're saying on the tree side.
Yeah, totally. And we need to. I mean, I'm particularly talking about urban trees because this is my what I'm enthused about. But it includes all green infrastructure. Every bit of planting that we do. What's it going to bring to us? How can we put some sort of valuation on that? And therefore, is it worth looking after? We have this dialogue with quite a few local authorities to say, can we actually change your trees? Can we take them out of your highways liabilities pot and put them into your assets pot? Yeah. Because then suddenly, once you value something as an asset, you get the funding to maintain it.
If it's a liability or not.
Yeah, the difficulty or the challenge with it is that it's in different silos. Different disciplines have different ways of actually getting funding and maintaining things. So sometimes there's a bit of a challenge to get these different silos to talk to each other. Yeah. But we do have some very forward-looking local authorities in the UK for which we can be truly thankful. Yeah, and talking to them about the circular economy as well is very important to them. When we talk about the fact we use plastics in our products, it's the best use of plastic. Once it's been used before, we can then use it now to provide permanent green infrastructure, sequestering the carbon that's actually been produced by the initial production of the material. Otherwise, what are we going to do with those plastics? We're going to burn them? That ain't great for the environment. We're going to bury them in landfill? Well, that's not going to provide us anything. We're looking at this circular economy to actually pay back, to sequester carbon, to improve our environment, rather than just destroy what to us is an asset.
Yeah, and again, if there's also a life at the end of it, then it's an even better situation, isn't it? So just going back to sort of GreenBlue Urban, then what's next? Where's the development? I notice that you're across different countries. Are there more? Is there more aspiration to have more products? Can you see more opportunities? Where do you see the company going and moving?
This is something that we are always considering. This, as the company is very dynamic, we're always looking at how we can work within our green infrastructure. We see opportunities for the green wall climbing system that we actually supply, which in effect is a stainless steel wires to allow plants to grow up facades of buildings, as we see a lot of opportunities for these in tighter city locations where there may not be a room for a tree. We see the whole sustainable drainage industry growing massively as we get these more extreme storm events, as our creaking and aging sewer infrastructure is really coming to the capacity. But then we also, trees are always going to be at the core and the heart of our business. And I believe that we're going to see more understanding of how trees can actively help us rather than just being an aesthetic on the street. One initiative we're currently working on is the Cool Towns initiative, which is an EU Interreg project where we're using trees, healthy trees, to actually air condition our towns and cities. Yeah. So by using the evapotranspiration, trees taking water from the ground, breathing that out through their leaves, what that does is that creates a slightly more humid but a cooler town. And I think we're going to see that's going to be quite necessary over the next couple of decades.
What's your sort of thoughts on trees and green infrastructure helping to regenerate high streets and, you know, give the high streets a new lease of life for where they're going to be after all the shops are closing down?
Well, the whole future of the high streets is a fascinating study. There's some great groups working on this, the task force to try and regenerate our high streets. I see green infrastructure is going to be a major part of it. Now, it's actually quite difficult to retrofit a lot of green infrastructure where we've got a lot of below ground constraints or needs of vehicle access. We've had some really successful projects where we've worked on these high streets and putting a lot of trees and greenery into them. But quite how the high streets are going to function in the future, I don't know. I could see that there's going to be a lot more residential into the centres of our towns and cities. Perhaps a lot of the retail buildings will be converted back to residential. And we know that trees and green infrastructure actually helps hold values, increases plot values if we can get some decent quality infrastructure in there. So yeah, I see it's going to happen, and they've even put some temporary stuff in the Regent Street, I see, to actually try and green that up to get people back there. And it's a great idea, but just have to remember that if we're using planters and that sort of thing, they do require regular maintenance because the plants only have what we give them in that situation.
Yeah, maintenance is quite important, isn't it? Full stop really on anything we do. Once it's pointless building something that's absolutely beautiful and they're not having the funds and the support to back up. And I do think more and more people are understanding that, getting it. And I guess it's all of our responsibilities to keep driving that home. Just going back to your enthusiasm for urban trees, is it just urban trees, or the trees full stop, and that urban is where the real passion is?
Yeah, no, I'm enthusiastic about trees everywhere. But what we find is it is the trees in our urban areas that bring us the values we need. And whilst many of us are lucky, and I'm certainly very, very fortunate to have a house and garden where I can grow trees, and I was brought up in a house which had a garden with trees in, there are many residents, many people who don't have that privilege, don't have that favour. Inner city homes where the only green infrastructure they may have access to is in the public realm. And I think we're very, very responsible to give those people opportunities as we've had opportunities where we can. So I think that the whole sustainability thing isn't just a matter of financial sustainability, but is actually quality of life sustainability. Can we improve outcomes, educational outcomes, health outcomes by planting trees in our urban centres?
And do you think as an industry we're good at selling that message?
I think it's a problem. We haven't really been good at articulating the values. I think we've been great, and the landscape architect's profession is great at understanding what's needed, but actually putting that out in terms of the value, I don't think we've been allowed enough voice. And I see that in the UK anyway, the landscape profession is quite low down in the hierarchy of design. So they get the plans just to pretty it up, green it up for the planning. And then because it's the last thing to be done on a site, usually it's the thing that's cut out because they've run out of money. So I think it's been a bit of a poor relation. And I think that's very unfair, because I think we should be getting some parity between our grey infrastructure and our green. If you went to buy a new house, Jim, and the developer told you that he thought the drains should be okay for 5 years, you'd probably say, well, hang on, I want those drains to be good enough for the life of the property. Well, why should green infrastructure be any different?
Yeah. And I guess well, I'm just conscious of time at the moment, so in terms of, there's a couple of other things I just want to, so if people want more information about the products, about the installation, and et cetera, is it, have you got a straightforward contact or someone that can, that can help them?
Sure. We've got a number of technical advisors and in the business. The website, www.greenblue.com. Please go and have a look at that. There's a lot of technical resource on that. But please bear in mind, we're not just product suppliers. We are trying to provide the resources and the solutions that are needed. And we're well known in the industry of being very ethical. We're not just trying to push product onto people. We're trying to find out the best way of doing it that meets within their price requirements, but more importantly, will give a legacy to future generations.
And where and when do you add the real value? So is it like, at the tendering stage? Where would you say that people should ring you early enough to get a better understanding, get the best value from your business?
Well, we say as soon as you know about the project and there's going to be some trees in there, please give us a call. Yeah. Often really doing it early on means that we can make some changes, perhaps, that make it a lot cheaper. We can advise on perhaps tree species that would work best in that environment. And we can actually get it embedded into the plan so that it becomes a recognised building block on the whole project, rather than a greenwash which we put on in the end.
And that support right throughout the UK. I know there's international stuff, but from your centre where you are, that it's right across the UK.
Right across the UK, and right up to the Highlands and Islands, and down to Jersey and Guernsey. We're covering it all, and we visit site. We attend a lot of design meetings, which is great because it helps remove any conflicts on there as well.
Okay, and I guess the final word for you on this then is like, so there's one golden nugget that you'd like the industry to do that's going to really help push forward. What would it be?
That's a great question. I'd probably say provide decent quantities of uncompacted soil for any planting. It's the soil. It is the soil.
Excellent. Howard, I really appreciate it, and you certainly do come across very enthusiastic about it, and we need more people like you out in the industry. So thank you very much, and thank you very much for joining us. And for the people watching now, I hope you enjoyed it. As I said, next week we've got all about marketing, so slightly different slants. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next week. Thank you, Howard.
Thank you, Jim.
Bye.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks. Bye-bye.